Hi guys! Do you have time for a few quick questions? I see you're having a lot of fun, but do you ever stop and think if what you do is sustainable? And do you know what sustainable development means? Sustainable development is to make the world a better place for everyone now without destroying the possibilities for the next generations. If you wonder if something is sustainable, you can ask yourself, can we do this over and over again forever? Sustainable development means that we need to keep three things in mind at once: social progress, economic development, and climate and environment. First of all, we have to take care of our planet. We have many natural ecosystems that must be in balance in order for us to live here. The climate system is one of them. This system ensures that the temperature is correct and that the atmosphere emits exactly the right amount of solar energy. When we emit harmful greenhouse gases, such as CO2, we clog the atmosphere. This changes the temperatures on Earth, which again affects our development. How we produce and use energy is incredibly important. Oil and coal are examples of energy we may run out of. Water, wind, and sun, however, will always be here. Using the lasting sources of energy that renew themselves is good for the planet and can provide jobs for years to come. Economics. Almost everything we develop, buy, and trade starts with nature. The smarter we use our natural resources and the better systems we create for a fair distribution, the more sustainable we are. One way to contribute to a more uneven distribution is to be more aware of what we buy and how it is produced. A football is a good example. It travels far before it reaches the football players. First, materials are made. Then, they print the logo somewhere else before a third country sews it all together. One single football sees the whole world before it reaches its goal. This journey ties us together. If we are to win the battle for a sustainable future, we have to play with fair rules that applies to everyone. Social progress. We humans are part of nature, but we're also important resources for the world. Just like water, the forest, and the sun, we have minds that can create the strangest and most creative things. But for us to be the best versions of ourselves, there are certain things that must be in order, like having equal opportunities to education, safety, food, and medicine. This provides greater opportunities for us as human beings, but also for the planet. We just have to think in new ways. These three must work together. That is sustainable development. And there is actually a plan for this. All the countries of the United Nations have agreed on a joint plan for sustainable development. But for the plan to work, we need to cooperate, and we need you to be on board. Are you with us?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second session of the National Youth Dialogue 2021 that was kicked off this morning. This afternoon's session is called Youth in the Decade of Action. The day's focus, as you know, has been on better youth, better world. So that is what we will be talking about as we go on. This is, as you know, the second session, and it will be a training session, which we hope you will find useful. To kick the session off, I would like to first introduce our partners. This training program is conducted by UNDP in partnership with the UNESCO Asia Pacific Center of Education for International Understanding, APCU. A little bit of background on the National Youth Dialogue, which you may have already been introduced to in the morning. The National Youth Dialogue on Leadership, Innovation and Entrepreneurship is a marquee annual national youth engagement exercise that is led by UNDP Sri Lanka. It is in line with Youth Collab, the UNDP Asia Pacific Program on Youth. and is part of a family of national youth dialogues held every year in more than 20 countries across Asia and the Pacific region. This is the fourth National Youth Dialogue that we are convening here in Sri Lanka. The dialogue engages a diverse group of young people across the island. It will be a series of both thought and action-provoking mini dialogues and innovative learning and development offerings spread across over a month, scheduled from between the 16th of February, that's today, right up till the 18th of March 2021. All the sessions can be accessed in any of your preferred languages, so they're available in English, Sinhala, and Tamil, as well as sign language, and will be conducted via Zoom. A quick reminder that registration is still open for upcoming sessions, so please head on to the Hackadev website where you'll be able to register for any future sessions. I will move on to introduce the session's facilitators for this afternoon. I am Dulani Sirisena, SDG Integration Specialist working with UNDP Sri Lanka, and will be conducting a few of the sessions this afternoon. I will be joined by my colleague Bhagya Maheshi, who is the data scientist attached to the Citra Innovation Lab with UNDP Sri Lanka. Oshan Gunatilaka will also be joining us. He is the UNV Youth in Learning and Innovations, representing the Hackadev Academy of Learning and Skills. We will also be joined by Yongjong Lee, Program Specialist attached to the Office of Education and Training of the AppCU, as well as Jacqueline Jihia, who is a Youth Ambassador with the Gced online campus. Just a quick reminder before we get started on the learning objectives of the Youth in the Decade of Action session, which we're about to start. As you may have seen before, the objectives are to deepen their understanding of the SDGs, to raise awareness regarding key issues and challenges in achieving the SDGs at both global and local levels. The third objective is to try and understand who a global citizen is and what global citizenship education is all about, and the connection of global citizenship and the 2030 agenda. The fourth learning objective is around the GCED and SDG practices, which we will do through a couple of case studies. And also to develop your own action plans for achieving SDGs as a global citizen. To help you make the most of this session, as this is a training session, I would encourage you to have a pen and notebook with you so that you can jot down any points as we go along. There will be a Q&A time allocated towards the end of the session. So if you have any questions, please raise them at that point, and any one of the trainers will come in and assist you with your questions. Please keep your microphones muted during the sessions as we have limited time slots available. Please feel free to use the chat section if you have any ideas or opinions that you would like to communicate as we go along. So that's it in terms of housekeeping. Please join us in this afternoon session. I hope you enjoy it and find it useful. I will now hand over to my colleague Bhagya Maheshi, who will take you through an introduction to the 2030 agenda. Bhagya, over to you.
Thank you, Dulani. Good evening, everyone. Let me share my screen and start on it. I think I require the sharing access. Can I get the sharing access, guys? Cool, thank you. Okay, let's start looking into the 2030 development agenda. Transforming our world, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development was adopted by all United Nations member states in September 2015 in UN headquarters, and it provides a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. There are 5 interconnected aspects that the 2030 Development Agenda pay attention. We call it 5 Ps. So let's have a look into these 5 Ps. The first P stands for people. The agenda determines to end poverty and hunger in all their forms and dimensions, and to ensure that all human beings can fulfill their potential in dignity and equality in a healthy environment. The second P is planet. The 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda determines to protect the planet from degradation, including both through sustainable consumption and production, sustainably managing its natural resources, and taking urgent action on climate change so that it can support the needs of the present and future generations. The next P stands for prosperity. The agenda determines to ensure that all human beings can enjoy prosperous and fulfilling lives, and that economic, social, and technological progress occurs in harmony with nature. The next P is peace. The agenda determines to foster peaceful, just, and inclusive societies which are free from fear and violence. There can be no sustainable development without peace, and no peace without sustainable development. The fifth and the last P is partnerships. The 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda determines to mobilize the means required to implement it through a revitalized global partnership for sustainable development based on a spirit of strengthened global solidarity, focused in particular on the needs of the poorest and most vulnerable, and with the participation of all countries, all stakeholders, and all people. The 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda is built on decades of work by countries and the United Nations. If you look back how it started, we can find few key milestones along the roadmap of SDGs. The first milestone is Agenda 21, which was adopted by more than 178 countries at the Earth Summit held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in June 1992. Following that, in September 2000, at the Millennium Summit held in UN headquarters in New York, the member states anonymously adopted the Millennium Declaration. There were 8 Millennium Development Goals focused to reduce extreme poverty by 2015. The third milestone is the Johannesburg Declaration on Sustainable Development and the Plan of Implementation, which was adopted at the World Summit on Sustainable Development in South Africa in 2002. In June 2012, the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, which is known as Rio Plus 20, was held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. There, the member states adopted the outcome document, The Future We Want, in which they decided in the area to launch a process to develop a set of SDGs built upon the MDGs and to establish the UN High-Level Political Forum for Sustainable Development. In 2013, the UN General Assembly set up a 30-member open working group to develop a proposal on the SDGs. 2015, the landmark year for multilateralism and international policy shaping, with the adoption of several major agreements. Transforming our world, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with its 17 SDGs was adopted at the UN Sustainable Development Summit in New York in September 2015, as I told you earlier. Apart from that, within this year, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, Addis Ababa Action Agenda on Financing for Development, and Paris Agreement on Climate Change were adopted by the member states. These all agreements have part in the Sustainable Development Framework too. So with this background, we would like to ask a quick question from you all using the Zoom poll. So we want you to answer the question, how many SDGs are there? The answers would be 15, 16, 17, and 18. So use the Zoom poll and let us know the answer. So I'm looking into the chat and I'm seeing that everyone is replying 17. Yes, there are 17 SDG goals in the framework. So with this, I would like to introduce you all to the SDG goals. What are the SDG goals through a short video? Yes, 73% have introduced saying it's 17 goals. So let's move to the video and understand what other 17 goals are. You guys. Okay. Moving on. As you all told me, there are 17 SDG goals. They are interrelated and interlinked. Under these goals, there are 169 targets, which some of them are recurring in its nature. And there are 247 indicators in total, where 231 of them are unique. These indicators provide a framework for monitoring and evaluation of the progress towards the 2030 milestone. The framework is not fixed, and the countries have the flexibility to add in or remove the targets or indicators that are not applicable to their local context. Also, the framework is reviewed and revised every 5 years, which means there had already been one revision to the original framework proposed in 2015. So let's take a look at goal 3 and try to understand the structure. So the goal 3 is good health and well-being, and it have 13 targets. As you can see in the screen, there are numeric targets such as 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, as well as alphanumeric targets such as 3.A, 3.B, 3.C, etc. So the main difference between this numeric and alphanumeric targets is that the numeric targets provide a possible policy direction and the alphanumeric targets provides the means of implementation. If I explain it more, so let's look at the target 3.4. It says by 2030, reduce by 1/3 premature mortality from non-communicable diseases through prevention and treatment and promotion mental health and well-being. So it's clearly focusing on non-communicable diseases and mental health. Whereas if we look at the target 3.B, it says support the research and development of vaccines and medicines for the communicable and non-communicable diseases that primarily affect developing countries, provide access to affordable essential medicines and vaccines, etc. So in broader terms, this target discusses about how the agenda expects to address issues related to both communicable and non-communicable diseases. So for each of these targets, there are one or more indicator assigned to measure its progress. As shown in the slide, there are indicators that are straightforward and some require many disaggregated level data series to ensure the concept of no one left behind. For example, if you look at 3.1.1 maternal mortality ratio, it's a very straightforward indicator. Whereas if you look into 3.3.1, number of new HIV infections per 1,000 uninfected population by sex, age, and key population, this require data disaggregated by male, female, different age groups, and different population groups just to understand the full granularity of the issue. However, depending on the local context, the countries can collect and disseminate data that contains more disaggregations other than specified by the framework and reflect the ground reality, and then use them accordingly in their planning. With this brief background understanding on the SDG framework, how the structure works, we would like to now have a quick recap on what you have learned in the first few minutes. So we'll ask again a few questions on a Zoom poll. So I would like to ask you all to answer on the Zoom poll. So there will be 3 questions. The first question is how many targets are there? 150, 169, 175, 200. The second question is how many indicators? 232, 244, 231, and 247. The third question is how frequent the framework is reviewed. 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, and 10 years. So we'll be giving you like 1 to 2 minutes to give your responses in the Zoom poll. So I'm seeing some people are replying on the chat also. Okay, so if I tell you the answers, the first question, how many targets are there? There's like 169 targets in the framework, and altogether, how many indicators is 247 now. The third question, how frequent the framework is reviewed? It is reviewed every 5 years at the HLPF, High Level Forum for Sustainable Development. So interesting answers. Shall we see the percentages? Okay. So 88% says 169, 64% to 47. So it's like most of the people have replied it's 10 years, no, it's 5 years. Usually the framework is reviewed 5 years, and the power is always on the countries, not on the development partners to change the framework. Okay, interesting results. I hope that you all have got a brief understanding about the 2030 development agenda. And now I would like to pass the floor to Dulani to elaborate on the global challenges in implementing the SDGs. Over to you, Dulani.
Thank you very much, Bhagya, for that quick introduction and useful introduction into the SDGs, the targets and the indicators. I hope you were able to get a quick understanding and overview of the 2030 agenda through that. We will now move into looking at the actual implementation of these SDGs. and what the global challenges and issues are that impact the implementation of the SDGs. I will share my screen quickly with one slide I would like to show you. Okay, I hope that is clear. Here we go. So with this slide, what I really want you to understand is that the SDG progress against targets and indicators is not uniform. So you won't be able to see exactly what these targets are from the icons, but you will see that, as you can see here, it's a selection of targets that have been shown, and there are 6 out of what has been depicted that are on track, whereas 24 are moving too slowly and some are actually going backwards. So this is an area of concern. And what I wanted to impress upon you is that we need to work in a concerted way to make sure that all of these targets are heading in the right direction. And that is something that requires a whole of society approach, not just governments, but the private sector, civil society, youth, academia. We all need to get together to make sure that the progress against these targets are heading in the right way. So if we are to talk a little bit about the global challenges and issues that impact this change, I'd like to touch on 6 mega trends that affect the implementation of the SDGs. The first one is around poverty and inequality. So as you very well know, ending poverty and reducing inequalities are central to the 2030 agenda and the SDGs, and especially, as Bhagya mentioned previously, in making sure that no one is left behind. If you look at purely income poverty has actually fallen sharply in some regions of the world in the last 20 years. So there has been good progress in terms of reducing income poverty. But there are, of course, challenges that remain with economic shocks and escalating conflicts and things like that that have a direct impact on income poverty. If you look at poverty in a much broader sense, however, you will see that beyond income and consumption, if you define poverty to include multiple aspects, for example, if you look at non-monetary deprivations related to health, related to education, nutrition, empowerment, and security, and so on, you will see that the trajectory isn't as positive. So there is, to start with, a lack of understanding in terms of what these multiple dimensions of poverty are, and then also a lack of sufficient data around how do we measure these non-income poverty indicators. Research and a lot of work needs to go into this to ensure that we are on the right track. So this is a big challenge that we face. In addition to that, the second mega trend I would like to talk about is demography. So as you will know, demographic dynamics have a big impact on how resources are allocated and resources are used. So some of these indicators include population growth, aging populations, migration, both internally within countries as well as externally among countries. Urbanization is a big driver. All of these affect the 2030 agenda, and they have implications on the social, economic, and environmental dimensions of the SDGs. So that's the second mega trend. The third one is something that is talked about quite a lot these days, and that is around environmental degradation and climate change. So the impact of human activity obviously has an impact on the world around us, the environment around us. And this is one of the mega trends that can have a serious impact on the shaping of the trajectories of our SDG progress. This can potentially undermine the progress that we have already made against some of those targets that I showed you previously. So for example, if you look at eradicating poverty and reducing inequality, so SDGs 1 and 10, climate-related issues can have a significant impact on both. This is why we have actually 5 dedicated SDGs to climate-related activities, as well as separate targets within other goals that look at climate-related issues. As Bhagya mentioned, the Paris Agreement was adopted also in 2015, which was signed up to by 195 member states. And this was an important call towards countries signing up to low carbon economies and showing commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and supporting climate adaptation efforts. The fourth mega trend I would like to talk to you about is shocks and crises. And as you all know, we are very much in the middle of such a global level crisis with the COVID-19 pandemic that is creating not only health issues, but socioeconomic issues as well. Apart from that, we can also look at economic and trade downturns, both related to the pandemic as well as related to other causes. Unemployment is another issue that can create a severe shock to a country or a community. Conflicts and violence, again, is another area, as well as natural disasters. So these are all sort of shocks and crises that can affect the implementation of the SDGs. The fifth mega trend is actually around international development cooperation and financing for sustainable development. So obviously, in order to achieve these SDGs, we need a significant amount of resources. The interesting thing to note is that there isn't a lack of resources in the world. It's simply a resource distribution issue that we are facing, and also a commitment issue from not just governments, but also the private sector, civil society, and other actors. So as I mentioned at the start, this is something that requires a whole of society approach. We need to be able to tap into resources that we may not have tapped into previously. We can't continue to expect overseas development assistance to be able to address SDG shortfalls, because this is a responsibility of all countries and all societies, and we will be talking a little bit about this later in the next sessions around global citizenships and what roles you can play in supporting this agenda. So that is on the fifth megatrend, which was on mobilizing finances to support the SDGs. The sixth and final megatrend is around technological innovations for sustainable development. So as you, I'm sure, are very familiar with, technology can play a huge part in supporting the achievement of the SDGs. And that is something that there's an increased focus on as we move forward. New technologies can come in which create access to markets, for example, for poorer populations who are able to access better services, which in turn will reduce poverty. As an example, it can also, as we have seen, create access to education and health outcomes. But it is important to note, as with everything else, and as we were talking about non-income poverty and deprivation, this could also be a driver to cut certain people off in terms of accessing services and resources. So having equitable access to technology and new innovations is going to be key in moving forward. So those were the 6 mega trends globally that I wanted to talk to you about. Apart from that, a couple of points to note. As Bhagya very rightly mentioned, and we saw in the video at the start, the SDGs are very much interlinked. So we can't look at climate-related SDGs, for example, without looking at the impact on health and on education, and how peaceful societies and just institutions are able to provide the enabling environment for all the SDGs. So we need to have a really clear understanding of how these SDGs interlink, and therefore the solutions that we look for should also be well integrated. Another challenge, of course, that Bhagya alluded to a little bit around data So as you see, with the targets and with the indicators, we need to be able to measure where we are going. And in the initial slide I showed you, there was a bit of an illustration around where certain targets are on the trajectory in terms of how we are moving towards the 2030 agenda. So we are only able to say that if we have good data. So we need to make sure that institutions are, they have the capacity to measure and they have the capacity to analyze where the progress is, where the regression is, so that we're able to say how fast we are heading towards the 2030 agenda, or if indeed, like some of those indicators I showed you, we're actually going backwards and need to correct them. The final challenge I would like to talk about is the lack of harmony of government policies. So if we look at governments around the world, few governments have actually made significant changes in the policies that are needed. The clearest example of this, of course, is the persistence of the use of fossil fuel subsidies around the world and the detrimental impact that has on the climate. So this is not consistent with the goals and the commitment that the global community has made. I think I will stop there. And we will move into the next session. I hope this was able to give you a quick picture in terms of some of the key challenges and issues that are faced globally when working towards the 2030 agenda. I would like to now move on to a session on the local context. So looking at the institutional infrastructure that we have in Sri Lanka, to support the attainment of SDG goals. Let me quickly share my screen. So I would like to actually start with a poll, and let's see how many of you are familiar with this. So some of you may or may not know that we have a Sustainable Development Act in Sri Lanka. I would like you to use the chat box to let me know when you think the act was passed. Okay, there are responses coming in. A lot of you have replied as 2015 December, very specific, 2017, and 2016. Okay. Right. So a mix of answers coming through, with a lot of you saying 2015, others saying 2017 and 2016 as well. So let's park that for the moment. We will cover this in the session. But let's go on to the second question that I have for you. Again, please use the chat box to respond. So some of you may have heard of the voluntary national review process, and I'd like you to let me know when the last VNR process was conducted in Sri Lanka. Right, responses are coming through. A few of you say 2018, 2019. All right. Okay, so quite a few of you say 2018, but there are also mixed responses, 2017 and 19. Right. So the correct response to both questions is with the Sustainable Development Act. The Sustainable Development Act number 19 was passed in 2017. So this was developed and adapted to implement a national policy and strategy on sustainable development and to establish the Sustainable Development Council, which is the body that supports the progress review and policy advisory functions to the government on the SDGs. The Act of 2017 provides a legal framework for developing national policy and strategies on sustainable development. It ensures the ecologically efficient use of natural, social, and economic resources, and it also promotes integration and a balance of interests in environmental, economic, and social factors in the decision-making process of all government bodies. So you can see that the government of Sri Lanka has signed up to a whole of government approach to the SDGs. Under this act, as I mentioned earlier, the Sustainable Development Council was set up in 2017. This has a structure where you have 3 permanent members representing high-level government bodies. So you have the Secretary to the President, the Secretary to the Ministry of Environment, and the Secretary to whichever ministry has the portfolio of sustainable development as the 3 permanent members of the Sustainable Development Council. Now, as some of you might know, in 2017, when the act was passed, there was a specific ministry with the mandate for sustainable development. So it was at that time called the Ministry of Wildlife and Sustainable Development, but we don't have that structure now. So currently this falls under the purview of the Ministry of Finance. So they are the ultimate body that has the responsibility and the mandate for the sustainable development agenda. Apart from sort of the permanent members I spoke about earlier of the Sustainable Development Council, we also have 8 other members who are appointed by or nominated by the President and the Prime Minister. So that gives you a sense of how important the Sustainable Development Agenda is to the government of Sri Lanka, and also the fact that they have put in quite a bit of resources to support its progress. We also have representation on the Sustainable Development Council from the various provinces. So a representative from each of the provinces is on the council so that they're able to intervene when there are specific issues related to their province. And the council has a chairperson who is appointed by the president, and there's a director general, and there's a secretariat with staff who support the implementation of the monitoring and review processes. So in terms of the voluntary national review process I spoke of earlier in the slide, this is something that is then driven by the Sustainable Development Council, and they manage this process. And if you're looking for the right answer, it was actually 2018 when the last VNR process was undertaken by Sri Lanka. It looked at the institutional framework for the SDGs within Sri Lanka, as well as the progress that has already been made, and challenges were also identified in that report. So if you would like additional information on this, please go online. You're able to find the report on the Sustainable Development Council website, as well as if you simply do a Google search, you will get the document if you're interested in looking at it in further detail. What I have to stress is that the VNR process is not just about the government coming up with a report on how they feel that progress has gone. It's actually a multi-stakeholder engagement process that happens involving everyone from civil society to the private sector, private citizens, the youth. So there's quite a large process that goes into it in order to get a holistic picture in terms of where we are on SDG implementation. So please go ahead and take a look at that report if you are interested in getting more information on that. With that, I would actually like to conclude. I hope you were able to get a quick snapshot from the two sessions I did in terms of global challenges in the implementation of SDGs, as well as the local institutional framework that we have in place to support Sri Lanka's commitment to achieving SDG targets. I would now like to hand over to my colleague Oshan, who will be talking about global citizenship in the context of the SDGs. Over to you, Oshan.
Thanks, Dhurani. And yes, I think we learned about what SDGs are and the challenges, and also about uh, the current trends of SDGs. And now I have the opportunity to explain to you about kind of a new topic to our local youth, I'm pretty sure. So now we are going to talk about global citizenship education. And let me quickly share my screen. Right. Okay. So we have quite a small time, but I think it will be enough for us to get a quick overlook what global citizenship education is. So in short, we call this GCED or Gced. Both are perfectly fine. And let's actually see what these are. So first of all, I have a question for you guys. And we have over 100 participants. So I'm expecting your interactive engagement. So here I have this question. It's asking you guys, what is global citizenship education? So the first answer is learning to live together peacefully. And the second option is the education needed to achieve SDGs. Third one, education to create a more just, peaceful, tolerant, and sustainable world for everyone. Fourth option, taking local action to make a global impact. Right. So I want you guys to look through these answers and select what you think the most relevant answer is. So you can let me know in the chat. You can choose the number and put it down in the chat. Okay, I see answers coming in. Yes. Plus A, number 3, number 4. And interestingly enough, we have some people saying all of the answers here. Right. So I think number 3, number 4 are taking the majority here. Okay. So actually, guys, the answer is all of the above. So all of you are correct. So how great is that? So like I said, SDGs and GCED are connected to everything that we do. And GCED is also part of SDGs, and it is also connected to everything that we do and we strive to achieve. Right. So before I continue with the rest of my presentation, I would like to show you guys a small video clip that will explain to you about GCED. And after that, we'll go into a more in-depth discussion. Right. Let's go to the video now.
The world is becoming one. The challenges we face are diverse, but they concern us all. We need global solutions, but where do we find them? Education teaches us to read, write, and count. That's important, but is it enough? Because individual actions now have a global impact, we have to change the way we think and act. What if education was transformative? What if education encouraged us to care for our world and for those with whom we share it? What if education taught us about peace, protecting our environment, human rights, respect, cultural diversity, justice? What if education gave us the skills we need to answer the big questions of the day? To find solutions to the interconnected challenges of the 21st century. Global citizenship education. It gives us the keys to a more just, peaceful, tolerant, and inclusive world.
Okay, so what if education was about all of that? Right, so actually GCED is teaching us how education that we get, that we deserve, can be about all of these things that this video was talking about. So here you can see, as you can remember, when it comes to SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 goals and there are 169 targets. And when you look at the goal number 4, quality education, and dive deeper into the 4.7 target, it talks about education for sustainable development and global citizenship. Education for sustainable development means the education that we need as young people and as all the humans in the world to achieve the sustainable development within our communities. So within the SDGs itself, they have included a target which talks about the education that people will need in order to actually achieve the sustainability within their communities. So if you can read this detailed target, by 2030, ensure all learners acquire knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including among others through education for sustainable development and sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace and nonviolence, and highlighting here global citizenship, and appreciation of cultural diversity and of cultures' contribution to sustainable development. And just think about it. Human rights, gender equality, promotion of a culture of peace, all these things are much needed in our today's society. So SDG 4.7 specifically talks about GCED and also the knowledge that we will need, knowledge, skills, competencies, and the attitudes that humans will need in order to achieve the SDGs in 2030. So let's talk a little bit more about GCED. So in the video, we heard that global citizenship education is about interconnectedness, interdependency, and complexity of a globalized world. So in today's world, where everything is globalized and connected and interconnected to everything in one way or another, we will have so many opportunities as well as so many issues that will arise within our communities and outside of our communities. So global citizenship education actually teaches us about the complexity of these connections and also the interdependency of each other when it actually comes to a globalized world. Secondly, the connection between the local and global issues, which require solutions beyond borders. Now, you see, when we consider citizens of a nation, we consider ourselves as part of that community alone. But actually, when in GCED, it talks about a global citizenship education that surpasses these borders and actually go beyond these borders to look towards sustainable solutions and connect local and global issues together and find solutions that will impact globally as well as locally. Thirdly, nurture respect for all, building a sense of belonging to a common humanity based on human rights. So in global citizenship education, we talk about common humanity based on human rights. So this sense of belonging will create a strong connection between nations, communities, races, ethnicities, and all other religions. And it will actually respect all these differences, diversity, based on the fundamental human rights. So everyone will be equal and treated equally, respected equally in uh, when the global citizenship education is actually embedded. Fourthly, learning to live together in peace, respecting diversity around us. So like I explained earlier, there is so many diverse things which are happening within and outside of our community. So all these religions, ethnicities, races, and nations have to understand that this common humanity, the sense of common humanity is all within us. And in order to practice this, we have to live in. When we actually practice this, the actual peace will occur. So GCED is all about learning to live together in peace. And lastly, let me explain to you the fifth point, which is help. GCD helps us to think critically about social justice. All right. GCD helps us to think critically about social justice and find sustainable solutions. So we need to, as global citizens, we need to think critically about the issues which are occurring around us and also find sustainable long-term solutions which will bring sustainable impact for all of us, not just one community or a certain set of people. So these are 5 things that I wanted to explain to you about global citizenship. And in GCED, the youth who are in education, we in GCED, we consider the need of education to be relevant to the learner's current context and aspiration. And GCED actually helps us to provide that. And also, it is important to note that GCED is more likely to succeed when all the girls and the boys and the others are treated equally, treated with respect as human beings, and encouraged to participate in schools and social lives. So these 2 points are also important when you are learning about global citizenship education. Now, there are 5 core themes which creates global citizenship education. First thing is human rights. As we discussed earlier, human rights plays a big role when it comes to creating communities which are globally connected, respected, and equally, equally identified within their communities. And then conflict and peace building. You know, in our current world, there are so many conflicts and issues which are happening, cross-border issues and cultural issues, religious issues. And all these things are actually dragging us down when we are trying to achieve sustainable development. When there's conflict and war, there is no chance for a proper development. So it is important to learn about peace building and creating awareness about each other's cultures and diversity in order to create that environment we need to strive the SDGs. Respect for diversity. Each culture, each religion has their own identity, and they uh, all have the right to be treated equally. So in this context, GCED tells us about how to respect all of the cultures and how to embrace the diversity that each of us has within us, and to take each of others' learnings forward together in achieving our sustainable world. Globalization and social justice. With the globalization, as we talked earlier, so many issues, social issues and cultural issues, religious issues, these things are bound to happen. So in order to actually be critical about these things and be fair and just about these things, we have to encompass a sense of social justice. So GCED actually gives us the skills and competencies which is needed to embrace these things and make them a part of our life. Sustainable development. So as we discussed, SDGs are kind of like global citizenship education is embedded in sustainable development goals, and also it helps us to actually achieve the SDGs in the long term. And these two things, SDGs and Gced, shares a reciprocal connection. So once Gced is actually practiced and embedded in a society, achieving sustainable development is also uh, much more easier. Right. So now let's talk about the main three domains of Gced. So global citizenship education, when we are trying to teach someone about Gced, we have to consider these three domains. So the first one being cognitive, secondly, socio-emotional factors, and also thirdly, the behavioral factors. So in the first domain, the cognitive domain, we talk about knowledge and critical thinking skills, which are necessary to understand the Gced concepts. So here we talk about uh, the knowledge, the thinking, the ideas that are relevant to becoming a global citizen, and also be interconnected and interdependent in a world which drives on globalization. And in the second factor, socio-emotional domain, we talked about values, attitudes, and social skills, which are necessary to be achieved in order to actually understand each other and also treat each other respectfully and equally. And in the behavioral domain, we talk about the conduct, engagement, and practical appliance that Gced requires. So once we learn about the cognitive domain, social, emotional domain, we also had to take action. That's why this behavioral domain is quite important. So as you can see, the cognitive domain is actually represented by a brain, which means the critical thinking and the knowledge that requires us to understand these concepts. And the socio-emotional domain is represented by a heart, which means the attitudes and the values and the social skills that we have to have in order to create a world that follows Gced. And the behavioral domain is represented by a hand, which means the actions, the engagement and practical appliance that we will have to build upon our communities to make the Gced practically available everywhere. Okay, so now we learned about what Gced is, what global citizenship education is. Now I believe that everyone got a good idea what Gced is. And even if you didn't know anything about Gced, you must have learned something out of this. So I think that you are ready to answer this question now. Who is a global citizen? Is it a person who travels a lot? Is it a person who speaks many languages? Or is it a person who acts for social justice and contributes to a more just, peaceful, tolerant, and sustainable world? Let me know your answers in the chat. Right, I'm getting a lot of answers here. Okay. Everyone is saying number 3. Yes, guys, you all are correct. Of course, a global citizen is a person who acts for social justice and contributes to a more just, peaceful, tolerant, and sustainable world. And in this global citizenship education, this is also our goal, to create a world, to create a more just, peaceful, tolerant, and sustainable world for everyone around us. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this session. And if you like to learn more about Gced, you can, here are 2 of the openly online available resources that I would like to share. First one being Gced Clearinghouse and also Gced Online Campus. But I'm not going to talk on these things a lot because we have a special speaker joining with us from UNESCO APSU. So Yonjung will be speaking in detail about Gced Online Campus. So I'm going to leave that part for her. And with that, I'm going to conclude my session on Gced. And I would like to invite our next speaker She's an ambassador for Gced online campus. Jacqueline is ready to share her experience with you that she would like. She's a practitioner of Gced herself. So she's here to explain to you what Gced means for her and what she has, how she has combined Gced with Sdgs and also carried out her own activities in her community. So Jacqueline, over to you.
Thank you, Ocean. I will do a brief presentation.
Just give me a second, I will share your presentation.
Okay, thank you. I will do a brief presentation. So as Ocean introduced me, my name is Jacqueline Wanjikunjehe. I'm from Kenya. I am currently pursuing my master's in data science at Lancaster University at the UK, and I am also a GCD youth ambassador. We'll start with my presentation about the brief history on the next slide. So, Ocean. Okay, thank you. The brief history of evolution of equality and women empowerment over the years. So I currently do activities in Kenya that are aimed at empowering women and girls, mostly in schools. And this is aimed at driving the Sustainable Development Goal 5, which is gender equality, and at the same time, education, dealing with global citizenship. And over the years, equality has been a major issue dating back to when women could not vote, women could not do specific things or make specific decisions, and where certain decisions were made for them, but this has changed over time. So gender equality in terms of same rights for men and women, opportunities and protection. It is eliminating harmful acts and offenses against women, be it in the home setting, at work, or any other setting whatsoever. So there have been gender issues such as specific harmful acts and offenses such as sexual offenses, inequalities at work such as different wages for both men and women, which over the years I will say have changed, but there's still more to be done. So according to the United Nations Population Fund, women are more likely to be poor and illiterate, which should not be the case. And I think that's a really serious thing to consider, where in some families, not in all, but in some families, you will find that women are the breadwinners. And if you think that they are the most poor and illiterate, this means that there will be more poverty. And ensuring that women have access to sustainable livelihoods is really important, and ensuring girls and women have access to education, have equal access to education as men. Okay, sorry. Okay. Ensuring that women and men have equal access to education is really important to ensure that we have reduced poverty and to ensure that women are more literate. So going on to the next slide, I will talk about a leader that I look up to. Her name is Wangari Mathai. She is the late Wangari Mathai. She was born in Kenya, and she represents strong women who have over the years fought for the rights of women, who are social activists, who are political activists. So she was a Nobel Peace Prize winner and a political activist who tirelessly fought for the rights of women and for the environment. At some point, I remember she was actually arrested, and she still stood strong. She was verbally abused, but she still stood strong. And over the years, she has been remembered for that. So she was the first woman in East and Central Africa to become a doctor of philosophy. She also founded the Green Belt movement, which was aimed at protecting the environment. So some of the major parks in Kenya, she contributed to their protection and prevention by private developers from acquiring such land. So I really look up to her. Being a woman, she faced ridicule and even got arrested, but her efforts and contributions have been recognized and have been remembered over the years and internationally. So she's a woman I really look up to. So going on to the next slide about women empowerment. So I'm really passionate about women and girl empowerment, and I believe that to successfully attain the Sustainable Development Goals, women and girls have to be provided with equal opportunities in every aspect. So in my country, girls in some region often do not get equal opportunity due to various reasons. So I will list some of the reasons that prevent girls from having the same opportunities as boys, and which leads to, as the study showed, higher literacy and poverty among women. So in the following slides, I will list the various causes of lack of equal opportunities for girls and women and the effects this has on their future, on the country in general, and the attainment of SDGs. So imagine if the population of women is higher, and at the same time, imagine if that higher population indicates that there is higher illiteracy and higher poverty levels, which only means that raising people's living standards will be very difficult. So for me, I believe that to raise people's standards for development, then because women are of higher population and the youth also, which are represented by both boys and girls, but women are also represented there, to enhance and to raise people's standards, then women have to be educated and poverty levels have to decrease among women. So I will also list the projects that I have participated in my country aimed at empowering women and girls. So going on to the next slide. On the first cause of lack of equal opportunities for women. So one of the major issues where I have engaged in is teenage pregnancy. So this has been a major problem in my country, and I'm sure in also other parts of the world, where girls end up getting pregnant and also dropping out of schools, leading to unequal opportunities for women in the future of work. So this has seen a rise in poverty due to existence of unplanned or properly planned families. So in the project, I have been involved in speaking with girls who have been affected and educating them on the importance of going back to school, and also speaking to girls who are currently in schools, girls and boys, and educating them on sex education, educating them on also family planning methods, and also the importance of abstinence, I believe is really important. So that's the aspect of global citizenship education, where this specific problem affects so many teenage girls all over the world, and which contributes and leads to inequalities in terms of girls don't get the same opportunities as boys. So going on to the next slide. Equal opportunities for girls and boys in school. So during one of the visits to a local school, I learned that education is the key to success. Most of the girls I have had the opportunity to interact with are from poor backgrounds and are not motivated or empowered enough to work hard and change their livelihoods. Some of them were young mothers and expressed their discouragements. Imagine a situation where a child has a child. Yeah, it's a really sad situation, which needs to be changed and which can be changed. So the free education in Kenya provides girls with the opportunities to go back to school, even after pregnancy, but more often than not, they end up dropping out of school due to discouragement, shame, and lack of empowerment. So going on to the next slide. Then in equal opportunities for women in schools. So in some institutions, when I came to do my master's here, I joined a program which is called the Athena Swan program, that is meant to ensure that women are represented in every department and ensure that their voices are heard. So in some institutions, women's voices are often unheard and ignored, creating a need for programs and policies in organizations that ensure women's opinions and voices are heard and women issues are addressed. So going on to the next slide. Women are also not given the opportunity to be in decision-making roles in some institutions, and in most instances end up not being heard. There have been discussions around, for example, work-family balance, which is really important for women, and some actions being taken, for example, providing for maternity leaves and such things to ensure that women have equal opportunity even at the place of work and their issues are equally addressed. So equality in decision making is important because it ensures that all views are taken into consideration and there is no bias in policy making, so as to ensure that women are included in the policies that are put in place. So in the modern world, women in some instances are faced with the responsibilities of taking care of their families. This leads to the creation of the need to be economically stable for both men and women as a way of eradicating poverty. So moving on to the next slide. Over the years, I think this is something that we have observed. In most countries, men are in leadership roles. You will find that men are presidents, men are members of parliaments, men are elected into cabinets. So the the proportion of men to women, you'll find that men are more than women, which leaves the question, are women's voices being heard and are their issues being addressed? So to me, leadership is not just being elected into a specific key role, but also rising up and making our voices heard. It is recognizing areas and fields that require change and taking action to bring such change. So as women, we have the responsibilities to ensure that our voices are heard, for one, and ensuring that we bring change to in every aspect or in any situation where we see change needs to be taken. So it is ensuring that every human being has equal opportunity in education and work and is living a dignified and a sustainable life. So going on to the next slide. One of the major issues, I think, in most parts of the world, not just in Kenya, is early marriage, where young girls below the age of 18 are coerced into marrying either older men or just getting married at a really young age. So I think in some countries, there are policies that have been put in place to prevent this, and this has been identified as a crime. But in other parts of the world, in parts of Kenya, in other areas, you will find that girls are still end up being married at a really young age or being exchanged for property or some of these things. And this ends up destroying their future in terms of they don't end up getting the same opportunities as boys. They don't end up going to school. They don't end up getting the good jobs and living sustainable lives. So in terms of attaining sustainability, we have to ensure that girls have equal opportunities in education and in work, and preventing some of these practices such as early marriages. So part of the project is to address such issues. Part of the project is to address such issues by voicing our opinions in schools on the importance of education and impact of early marriage on girls' livelihood. So on to the next slide. Action taken in empowering schools. So in various projects I've participated in Kenya, we have taken actions, and I know institutions have taken actions and governments have taken actions. So empowerment in schools has been one of the most effective actions taken, with girls changing their perspectives and expressing their desire and passion to be leaders and change makers in their communities. The disadvantage is that there is need to empower girls in all schools, and hence need for action by governments and other institutions to ensure that women and girls are empowered. So educating them on the importance of education and various ways they can improve their livelihoods and also their families is important and has proved to be very effective. So this is part of global citizenship education, going to different schools and educating girls on the importance of education and how they can be future leaders and change makers. So on to the next slide. I think I'm almost done. So ensuring that women are well represented in all in all departments and in decision making is key in ensuring equality and attainment of sustainable development goals. So ensuring there are policies in place and monitoring and evaluation systems to ensure that there are no offenses against women is very important. You might find in some institutions there are offenses done against women and women do not have the power or they do not have the voice to stand against it. So ensuring that there are policies that are put in place to ensure that such offenses are not taken against women is necessary. So there is also need to ensure that marginalized and poor communities do not just have access to education, but have access to quality education. So on to the next slide. So in conclusion, I came across some of the activists who have led to various change in terms of gender equality in the past. And one I came across was Shridhana Truth, who made a speech on "Ain't I a Woman?" So I'll leave this to probably our participants to go and look at the poem and the history and how she contributed to change. She was actually a slave. She was unfortunately she was traded. She went through slave trade, so she expressed her concerns, which is unequal treatment for women. In her speech, her speech has been used over the years to advocate for human rights. She believed that women can do as much or even more than what men can do. If men eat, women can eat as much. If men work, women can work as much. And so her question was, where is the inequality coming from? Why are women being treated in an unequal way than men? So I believe in having one voice that advocates for gender equality, having one goal for a better future. So thank you so much. I hope we can all fight for women's rights and ensure that there is gender equality in all parts of the world. Thank you.
The world.
As the society changes, education should change accordingly. And the change can begin at your fingertip. Here, we introduce you to Global Citizenship Education. You can learn about global citizenship education anywhere, anytime. Welcome to Gced Online Campus, an e-learning platform on global citizenship education. Learn the basics of global citizenship education with our open courses, a learning opportunity open to everyone. Deepen your knowledge by learning the thematic areas and pedagogies to enhance your capacity in implementing global citizenship education, where various learning materials and interactive discussions are also available. Explore the key topics and issues of global citizenship education with special lectures from renowned experts. And get inspired by good practices and case studies from different corners of the world. Start with us and reach to all.
Yunjung, you can start.
Okay, thank you, Ocean. Okay, hello and good afternoon to everyone participating in today's session on Sustainable Development Goals. My name is Yoon Jung, and I am a program specialist in UNESCO Asian Pacific Center of Education for International Understanding, which is also known as APCU. I'm in charge of developing and operating online programs regarding GCD, Global Citizenship Education. So first of all, I'd like to thank all the colleagues and trainers of UNTP Sri Lanka for conducting today's session. And in line with today's training, FCU is doing various workshops and projects to disseminate GCD for the achievement of SDGs. We're especially doing this through conducting workshops and programs regarding the SDG Goal 4.7, Education for Sustainable Development. And this is also related to the key part of the GCD. As you watch the short video from the beginning, GCD Online Campus is one of the programs that FCU is conducting. It's an online learning platform where various types of courses and free resources regarding GCD are provided to learners from all around the world. You can just simply Google GCD Online Campus and visit our website. So from now on, I can share my screen and have a look on the GCD Online Campus website together. Can I share the screen? Can you please allow me to share the screen? Oh, thank you. Okay, so this is the main page of our website, and as you can see, there are brief introduction of GCD online courses currently uploaded on our website, and also we can see the learners reviews and simple navigators for beginners on how to access to our course. Depends on their level. And also brief introduction regarding the GCD resources uploaded on our website. So among these contents, we're going to have a look on courses by registration. This is the board where we mainly upload our GCD newly developed courses and also ongoing courses on GCD. As you can see, there are lots of courses uploaded here. We can see introductory session on GCD, like pandemics, media literacy, climate change, etc. And there are more courses are here. But in this session, we're going to have a look at this third course. Okay, so as you can see, the title of the course is Becoming Global Citizens for a Sustainable Society. This course is co-developed with Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens located in Austria. And this course has 5 modules like this, and also detailed units like this, as you can see. And we have around 37 lecture, interview, and case sharing videos of renowned experts and practitioners of SDGs. So looking through this course together, I hope you can get more detailed information on SDGs and be interested in studying SDGs in depth at your own pace. Okay, so let's get into the classroom together. So this is the main page of our classroom. And before looking through the overall structure of this course, I can say that the main point of today's session is the relationship between GCD and SDGs and how we can relate them each other. We've previously learned that GCD refers to the citizenship that we need to have living in this global world. So we need to recognize what kinds of problems are happening these days, sympathize with the situations, and then do the actual practices that can solve the problems. As there are various issues and challenges to achieve SDGs, such as education, poverty, gender equality, etc. It's a matter of fact that we need to have a position of sympathy and initiative, which is also the core aspect of GCD. So scrolling down the page. Okay, so regarding this point, this online course deals with basic concepts of SDGs and GCD, and mainly talks about why GCD is important in achieving SDGs. So like in this screen, you can see there are many professional lecturers such as the former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and like Stefania Giannini, the Assistant Director of UNESCO. And also we have an important panel discussion of Gced Youth Network, which shows that the role of youth in SDGs is really important. After that, you can participate in the forums and share your thoughts with various learners. For example, this is the actual forum that global learners around the world are sharing their thoughts and reflections on the questions uploaded on the forum. So you can send a reply to this like post and freely share your thoughts with your like peer learners. Okay, and the next session is global citizenship in a challenging world. So far, we have learned the basic concepts of GCD and SDGs. So we are going to learn about key issues and challenges to achieve sustainable development goals. So there can be like poverty issues or peace building issues, media information literacy, and migration and refugees issues. So there can be various kinds of like challenges in achieving those sustainable development goals. So we provide lecture videos regarding them and make students to think about how we can deal with those kind of problems. And also we provide documentary videos, which can make students have their own reflection on the like actual stories happening in this world, like nowadays. And after that, we can learners can share their reflection on that on uploaded forum. And in the third module, it's global citizenship for transformation. So as we have learned about the basic concepts and key issues, we're going to delve into like deeper aspects of global citizenship and SDGs. So we're going to learn about how global partnership can be handled in the aspects of SDGs and also women and youth empowerment, data analysis, and in more educational aspect, we can learn about transformative education. And yes, and based on this, we're going to make actual practices like and case sharing videos of global citizens in module 4. So if you want to have an idea of how we can start our own like advocacy or like activities and actual practices, you can look through the interviews and like panel discussions and also documentary videos regarding this one. And then also you can share your plans or like draft plans with like peer learners in this forum. And based on what we have learned so far in the last module, we encourage learners to build their own action plan. So even if we have learned those kind of knowledge and we decided to become an active global citizens, but not making into actual practice, it can be meaningless. So we encourage students to like build their own action plan referring to this kind of lecture videos and materials. So as you are youth participants, we can go through the 4 youth advocacy for global citizenship in this board. And we can watch a lecture video and build a draft action plan based on the uploaded guidance book. This is a youth advocacy kit which we made for youths to develop their like advocacy plans and strategies to disseminate GCD. So after that, you're going to like upload your final assignments on this board. And then, yes, through this kind of process, you're going to have a more in-depth information about SDGs. Okay, so far we have looked through the overall structures of this online course. And in line with this, I'd like to watch some parts of one of the uploaded documentary videos in this classroom with you guys regarding how youths should act and what kind of attitudes youths should have when facing the challenges and difficulties to achieve SDGs. So this is a story of an Indian boy. He is 19-year-old and his name is Mukesh Rajak. He was born into a marginalized community in an impoverished region of rural India. He's Dalit. Dalit is a member of India's untouchable caste, but an opportunity to attend a non-profit private school made him to find his voice as a community organizer and citizen journalist. So as this video is originally around 30 minutes, we're going to partly watch the video for about 7 to 8 minutes. Okay.
Why the school is locked? Hey, just a minute.
Whenever I go to any village, the villagers have hope on me. And whenever I'm not able to do something for them, I feel a lot of worry. I also feel shame. So many things I saw in my childhood, just so many injustice. I saw the people facing so many types of problems on their daily lives, but they are not speaking out. We will enter to the village and ask about this question, about this school. Why this one is closed today, right now? Education is the barrier to change anyone's life. Children from my community is not getting good educations because they are from poor family. Their parents can't afford a private school. And the situation of government school is too bad. The teachers of that school is just like a culprit, as they are not giving interest to the children. They are not thinking that these people is from my own community. If I will do something for them, it will be helpful for them. They are thinking just like earning. I was also from a marginalized community. My background was also not good. So I'm thinking today I'm achieving so many things due to my education. So I want that the people like me who is facing this type of problem, this type of cruelties in their daily lives, they will also break that barrier and come to a new way, new path. वो लोग स्कूल के अंदर क्या करते हैं?
चुपचाप बैठे रहते हैं किनारे में जाके। ऊपर में बैठल रहते हैं। सब छत पर बैठते हैं, बच्चा लोग के नीचे घुराते हैं। बच्चा लोग इधर से उधर दौड़ता है, तो पढ़ाई होता नहीं है। तो हम लोग गरीब आदमी हैं, तो हम लोग कहाँ से पढ़ाएंगे? मजदूरी करते हैं, और मजदूरी करके हम प्राइवेट तो उसको पढ़ा नहीं सकते हैं। कोई बड़ा स्कूल में प्राइवेट में दे नहीं सकते हैं। करेंगे हम लोग क्या? वो लोग का ध्यान यही है। कोई भी हम लोग का योजना आता है, कोई घर द्वार आता है, उसे 15-20 हजार रुपया हम लोग का एक घूस लग जाता है।
आप लोग आवाज उठाइए उस पे। आप लोग देखिए, आप लोग को एकजुट होना होगा। एकजुट होकर आवाज उठाइए। देखिए हर कोई आपके पास आ जाएगा।
देखिए सबसे पहला नंबर यहाँ का दलाल बहुत है। दलाल के चलते हम लोग का कोई काम नहीं होता। जैसे स्कूल में भी 4 हमारा सरकार 100 रुपया देते हैं, 40% वो लोग नोच लेता है। 2009 में बच्चा लोग के पैसा मिला, 2009 के बाद पैसा बच्चा लोग नहीं मिला है। खाली बोल रहा है जो आज मिलेगा कल मिलेगा, आज मिलेगा कल मिलेगा, बस यही बात हो रहा है।
पिछले साल से मिला है तुम लोग? पिछले साल स्टाइपेंड मिला है?
एक बार मिला है।
कब मिला?
अब उतना क्या यार।
ठीक है, अब we will research on that one. After that we will do something. अपना भाई है। The government is trying to do so many things for the community, for the children of my community. But the thing is that the person who is involved in monitoring all these things, they are not monitoring properly. In the entire of this 20 kilometer or 30 kilometer, there is not any electronic media in this area. I am only one in the locality of Jagdishpur. How a government itself behaved with the common people in India. They behave too rudely with them. So when I collect the video, that time the government official knows that he will expose. And they knows this is our duty to monitor all these things. This is our duty to solve the problem. So they knows if this video will reach to the person who is honest, who is an honest person, then they will take action to us. So it's better to solve the problem. ताकि अगर ये पाया गया, और एक चीज़ हम आपसे जानना चाहते हैं सर, अगर ये पाया गया कि वहाँ पे बच्चों से दस्तखत करा लिया गया और पैसा नहीं बांटा गया और अकॉर्डिंग टू पेपर ये शो किया गया कि वो लोग के बीच पैसा बांट दिया गया है, तो आप इस संबंध में क्या कदम उठाएंगे?
पैसा यदि वहाँ पे आया हुआ है, उन लोगों से जाली दस्तखत करवाया गया है और यदि नहीं बांटा गया दस्तखत करवा के वो पैसा आया हुआ है, तो जाहिर सी बात है कि ये 420 का केस बनता है, कि धोखाधड़ी का मामला बनता है, कि यदि घपला हुआ है इस पे तो एफआईआर किया जाएगा.
What the government department expect from the reporter, they want that the media will expose their goodwill. They don't expect that we will expose their bad will. They love the people who report their goodwill, who report their event, who they report their program only. But I don't do that type of work. I don't report any program or event. I do the work. I expose the work of corruption, of their mistakes, so they don't like me.
Okay. So from this video, we can see how youth can be actively engaged in the way towards the achievement of SDGs. So thankfully, the situation is getting better comparing to half centuries ago, but still there are lots of people who need our help but cannot speak out their circumstances and difficulties. We need to focus on those people and situation and try to support them with our own abilities. As youth is very important generation having infinite potentials to face the challenges nowadays and power to solve these problems, it would be great if you have a very sharp point of view and start to plan your own activities in the local context. And it doesn't have to be complicated like having campaigns, etc. Like for example, one of our youth ambassadors promoting Gced online campus he's doing his best to promote SDGs and Gced in his hometown using tourism and introducing the importance of nature to the tourists. So it can be very simple and you can just start simply doing what you can do in your daily lives and living like radius. So far, we have briefly looked through the importance of Gced in the context of SDGs achievement, why youth is important in this process, and the related Gced online course to help you have more in-depth information on this. I hope this session was helpful to you, and FCU will always be cheering you on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for that insightful session. If I may come in, so for the next few minutes, for the next few minutes, we'll be focusing on the questions from the audience. So far, we have received 2 questions, so we'll first answer that. And I would like to ask all the participants to use the chat box to send in your questions. So there was a question raised while the briefing sessions going on the SDG framework on the number of indicators, the 231 and 247, there's a doubt. So like if I clarify the doubt, when the framework was introduced in 2015, there were 244 indicators in total and 232 indicators, the unique indicators. The difference between this is certain indicators duplicated in different goals. So when the revision was done in 2020, the number was changed. There are 231 indicators, unique ones, where altogether we have like 247 indicators. So when the indicators are duplicated, either they are duplicated in 2 goals, such as 7.B.1 and 12.A.1, or within the same goal, like 15.7.1 and 15.C.1, or they are duplicated in 3 goals, such as 1.5.1, 11.5.1, and 13.1.1. So it's again linked back to the point that I made earlier, that the SDG goals are interlinked, interrelated. So when you talk about the disaster related indicators, it talks at the very beginning on the poverty goal, and then it comes to the climate action, and then when it comes to the cities in goal level. So likewise, whenever there's an interlinked and interrelated things, the targets are repeated and the indicators are repeated. That's why there are like 2 numbers for unique indicators and the total number of indicators. Do you want to add anything, Dulani, to that?
No, thank you, Bhagya. I think you explained that question really well. I might go to the next question that was raised. And if I understand this question correctly, this is probably relating to that slide I showed you on the current global SDG progress. So the question here was, why is sort of why after 2020 we are considering 2030. I think what I need to clarify there is that what I showed on that graph is a snapshot in time review. So basically it shows how far we have got in terms of achieving the goals and specific targets that were highlighted in that slide at the end of last year. But if you continue that trajectory over the next years between now and 2030, you will see a different graph. So what I showed you was the current progress up to 2020. I hope that helps answer the question.
Yeah. Building on the second part of that question, there was a question asking, global SDGs are just a concept in development. What do you think? So it's one of the misconceptions I think we have to clarify. Yes, this is a global agenda, but this is not a development partner's agenda or a checklist. This framework was developed in consultation with the countries. So it's owned by countries. And also, although it starts as like the global level action plan, it have the national level idea, and then it goes down to the subnational level. So there's a concept called localization, SDG localization. We haven't touched on that in this session. So again, as I said, the countries have the flexibility to prioritize the goals, add in or remove the frame targets or the indicators, and get the policy directions or map the national priorities with the SDG framework. So if, again, this is a whole of a society approach. I'll take one target and say that how it links. So on goal 3.6, the target 3.6, say by 2020, half the number of global deaths and injuries from road traffic accidents. So how can we reduce the road traffic accident deaths and injuries? So you can have like policies or the rules in place from the government, but there's a huger responsibility, huger role from the society to make sure that you drive safely and you adhere to the rules and regulations there. So again, answering to the question, it's not just a concept, it's a framework and an action plan that is very holistic and provide necessary policy directions to have not just development, but sustainable development, something that will last for a long time. I think I clarified it. You want to add anything?
Thank you, Bhagya. Yes, I would just like to add and actually draw your attention back to the video we just saw that Young Jong shared with us, which very much illustrates what SDG progress looks like in terms of a community level engagement as well as an individual's engagement, because there were interventions there that were highlighted on education achievement, related to poverty, related to corruption. So these are all part of the goals. And if you want to understand how the global goals and this marvelous concept that we have at the global level actually relates to our everyday lives, I think that was a very neat example. So just wanted to draw the attention to that. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe Oshan can take the 2 questions on GCED. We have 2 questions. Oshan, over to you.
Yes. Right. Yes. On GCD projects which are running in Sri Lanka, I think we have 2 questions on it. So currently, in the Sri Lankan context, I'm pretty sure there are things which are related to GCED which are happening. But if you talk about direct global citizenship education and based on the concept of GCED, we are having several initiatives going under UNDP Hackaday program. So one of these programs are Engage to Disengage, the critical media information literacy training that we have developed in partnership with UNESCO APSIO, which has been which was implemented last year, and currently it's running strongly with a group of E2D advocates, and also from Hackaday Academy's side. And also in the future, we are planning to initiate more programs on global citizenship education. We are going to dive deeper into the concepts and domains of GCED and discuss these things in further through various trainings and workshops and online facilitation programs, hopefully together with UNESCO APSIO. And I ask you guys to keep an eye on our social media channels and websites to get those information in time. And also, I think if you are willing to learn more about GCED, the GCED online campus would be your best place. So like Yeonjong presented to us in the last few minutes, please go to GCED online campus and sign up. You can practice all these GCED related courses for free. And soon enough, in Sri Lanka also, we are going to implement GCED related training programs in the ground level. So please stay with us. We will share more information on these courses with you through UNDP Sri Lanka social media channels and also the website. And you can see the GCED online campus website link shared in the chat. So please have a look there and register and follow these courses at your own pace. Yes.
So very broad question. Like, are we going to end this process by 2030? So it's like a very future oriented question. But looking into the past, what we can say is that the SDGs were built on the MDGs, which were proposed in 2000, which had a 15-year of lifespan. And again, for the SDGs, there's a 15-year lifespan, which means the current framework will end in 2030, but by that time, there will be another framework will be in place by reviewing the progress of the SDGs, maybe prioritizing the targets or the goals that haven't achieved thus far. That would be my best guess, but it's not, I know it's not a like concrete answer, but there will be future plans regarding the SDGs. Do you want to add anything, Gulani?
Well, just to say that whether we call them the Millennium Development Goals or the Sustainable Development Goals, I think what it really gives us is a blueprint and a target in terms of how we wish to see the world and where we want to take it as we go forward. So as Bhagya said, there will be consultations towards the end of the SDGs. There will be a review that happens, and this is an ongoing process. As she mentioned, the indicators and targets themselves get reviewed every 5 years. And also the progress of various countries will be reviewed as we move forward. So this is not an aspiration that will end in 2030, I strongly believe, and it is up to us really as global citizens to encourage our governments and our societies to push for those targets so that we have that aspirational goals that we can work towards going beyond 2030 as well.
Thank you, Dulani. So throughout this session, you all learned a lot about the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. We start with a very broader understanding about the framework, and then we talk about the global challenges, and then move to the local context, and then slowly move into like global citizenship and its contribution to SDGs and what youth can do actually with like concrete examples. So as we are reaching to the end of today's session, we would like to know your ideas about what can you do as youth today to achieve the SDGs. So we'll share a link on the chat for a mural. So click on that link in the chat box and you will see an interface which will be similar to what we'll share soon in the screen. From the left menu, select a sticky note, then double click on that sticky note, post your idea into that idea board. So please don't remove anyone else's ideas, just post your ideas. All clear the instructions, how to go into the mural, get a sticky note and post it there. Just give me a thumbs up if things are clear. Okay, so we are seeing some ideas being posted. Tell my friends about the SDGs, plant more trees, which is good, yes. The meantime, you put your ideas in. We also would like to ask you all to switch on your videos. After this idea session, we'll take a group photo. So we have, and also you can use any language you like. Reduce the usage of plastic, yes, would be good. To make people aware about the program. So I guess it's more on the Gced front, explore the realities, yes. So again, the framework is about understanding the ground reality. That's why we talk about the importance of having more disaggregated data so we can actually represent the ground reality when it comes to the policy making. Be more sustainable. So keep populating the mural. We'll collect your ideas. So there are a few technical problems, I think. You can click the link and join in as a visitor to the mural board. Okay, so you got the answer. If you are using the mobile phone, you won't be able to access the mural link. But keep posted your ideas. We'll collect them. With that, we would like to ask you all to switch on your videos so we can take a group photo. Oshan will get the group photo. So everyone, please switch on your videos.
Yes, everyone, please turn on your video and you can smile, you can make a cute pose, like you can make a heart or a big heart or a Korean heart? Thumbs up, yes. A peace sign, anything that you would like to do. Please turn your videos on and join us in this photo. All right, I see many of you have turned on your cameras. If others can also turn your cameras on. All right. Okay, is everyone ready? You can go ahead and make a pose and I will take the photo in. Oh. Udita, Taraka, Sanduni, Malisha, Walat join another photo. Are you guys joining for the photographs? We are going to give you a few more seconds. Okay, so let's take the photo now. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, one more time. Smile, please. Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for your participation and your contribution. And wishing you all to have a pleasant evening. Do you want to add anything,
Yes.
Ushan, on top of that?
Yes, of course. Yes, just one more thing, guys. Before we leave today, actually, I wanted to let you know that we will be sending you a feedback form through email. So if you guys can kindly complete that feedback form, that would be really appreciated. And we will also issue a certificate for the people who stayed with us until the end. And of course, you will have to fill out that feedback form in order to us to identify who you guys are. So please complete that feedback form within at least 3 days at least. So we will be sending out the emails once you, we will be sending out your certificates through emails once you complete your feedback form. And of course, we hope that this engagement was quite successful and useful for you guys. And we are hoping to see you in the upcoming sessions. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
And
have a pleasant day.
Of course, thank you, Yeon Jong, for joining us from all the way from Korea, and also Jackie. Thank you very much for joining with us. I know it must be quite a hectic task for you, given the time differences and everything, but we appreciate your effort and your support as always.